Sorry, we were.
Recorded
Okay.
now. So as Alex said, I'm a second generation housing consultant in the state of Connecticut. Unlike my father, I'm not a housing policy expert. I'm a community organizer and a facilitator, a trainer, a teacher, a coach. I'm the person who can get the right wing, super pro coal person and the anarchist environmentalist in a room and build a solar energy project together, not by one telling the other that they're wrong, but by recognizing the common ground that we have, which is we all want to save our community center and we all don't like the energy company that is exploiting us and raising our rates. That is a story. I think that is the project which I did in the Kentucky coal fields, that convinced my father that I could be useful here because recognize that you can have the best housing policy prescriptions in the world, but if the only people showing up to the zoning board meeting or the wetlands meeting or the select board meeting or whatever board meeting are saying no, 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 absolutely nothing, we don't want it, it's still not going to go anywhere. And so, what I've been doing for the past several years, working as a consultant with several groups, including the South Central Regional Council of Governments, the SCROG, which is where I met Alex, is helping local groups in towns across the state to connect with their neighbors, not to tell anybody that they're wrong, not to shove anything in anybody's face or down anybody's throat, but to make it possible for people to be informed and involved in the decisions that affect their lives, including but not necessarily limited to housing. Making it possible for people to recognize how an issue like housing actually affects their life, because there's a lot of people who do not think about themselves as having an issue with housing, who spend a lot of time thinking about the way, whether they're going to be able to make rent or whether they're going to be able to afford food after they've paid their rent, or whether their kids would be able to stay in their community. And all of these other day to day questions that affect people's lives that people often don't connect with. Oh, because this is happening in my life, I should go to the zoning board meeting when this new, mixed income housing development is being proposed. And so the only people who go to the zoning board meeting when the new mixed income housing development is being proposed are the same people who've always gone, the people who believe in the lies, that if you make it possible for people to afford to live in a place from different backgrounds, then you're going to destroy the community. And so I've done this work in a bunch of areas nearby. This is my first time just working with Alex, our first public meeting in Bethany, but have done this work variously in Woodbridge and Seymour and Oxford and Derby, Ansonia, Milford, Wallingford, Brantford, whole lot of towns in the area. And so, can put you in touch with folks there that we worked with. We do some regional strategy meetings and trainings, some of which Alex has been to. And because it's a big challenge and a lot of people have it, and we want to support and learn from each other as best we can. But what Alex and I were talking about leading up to tonight is, given that there is now, for a variety of local reasons, an opportunity to be proactive about housing in a way that may not have been possible before, how can we make a 3 to 6 month tactical plan to connect with neighbors, to meet people where they're at, literally and figuratively, share stories, get to know each other, recognize the common ground that we share, recognize the concerns and questions that people have, get questions answered, and start building a consensus around the ways in which we can make it possible for everybody in town to have a place to live that they can afford. And so that is what I am hopefully going to be able to be helpful thinking through tonight, in terms of how we can start making and executing that kind of plan before the committee gets into any concrete housing projects, do this kind of building on this piece of land, etc. Alex, is there anything you'd want to add from what I said based on what we've been talking about?
Well, I think the only thing I would add is I think I can speak for other members of the committee that we've spent the last 6 months kind of getting ourselves organized and a little bit more familiar with some of the issues and opportunities. Um, and my hope is this would be one of several action items that we can start to kick off. So I do have a few things at the end of your talk, which would be assignments for all of us to think about and come back to our next meeting with some very specific things that hopefully we can actually start chewing out. So
Cool. So before we get into nuts and bolts, I want to stop and just ask everybody, does that make sense? The way I laid stuff out, does that feel right? Are there things about it that feel wrong? Are there yeah buts, what ifs, how abouts, questions, concerns? What's on people's minds? All crystal clear. We can just go out and do it right now. Oh man, if I were in a space with you, it's tough to do this on hybrid. I would be giving y'all a lot of hell right now, because I know you got stuff. Bethany has to be welcoming to outsiders also. Connie, you want to say a little more about that? So I got thoughts, but I want to hear yours first.
Committee speak and people that are not on the committee speak.
Um,
I don't know how we do that.
Why, you don't want me to speak?
No, I'm just not sure in our meetings how that works.
no, I
I'm
mean,
used to coming from a zoning background, so it's,
we we are looking for everybody to be involved and have a voice. So please.
Thank you. This is input, and I was asked. So I think part of what we're what we're talking about here is not just making housing that's and making policies for Bethany that's being accommodating to people who already live here, but to be a welcoming community for people who might want to live here, who can't currently live here because we don't have any kind of housing stock for people like that. There's no real rental stock. There's no real stock for, um, you know, affordable housing stock. And so I'm just saying that that's part of our mix, and it's actually part of the mandate that's now before us legislatively.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Connie. And I want to respond to you, but before I respond to you, I want to say I agree 100% with everything you just said. And so know that in the context of what I'm going to say. This issue that Connie brings up is something that will almost certainly come up in community housing conversations. Who's going to live in these houses? AKA, right, we don't want outsiders to come in. So here, you know what? I'm being a smartass. Let me dial back the sarcasm for a second. There is a legitimate interest in people moving to a community because they like that community and they don't want that community to be radically upended and to become something totally different, right? I mean, I think right now, if I said to any one of you here, actually, you know what's going to happen tomorrow is Bethany is going to become like South Philly, where I live. So there's going to be no more grass, and very few trees and lots of cars, and red brick row homes. I bet a lot of people in this room who deeply care about housing are going to be like, heck no, that's not why I came to Bethany. And but so often we get polarized, right? So it's, we need to have housing for everybody. We don't want outsiders here. And a big part of the conversations that we're talking about having tonight is making it possible for people to recognize the common ground, right? So when somebody might come to a conversation saying, well, I don't want housing if it means that outsiders are going to come here. And then we say, okay, got it, heard. And then we also make room for someone else to say, well, my mother is really sick and I'd really like her to be able to live close to me. It's like, is that okay? Is that an outsider? And it's like, oh, right. Like people have, I once heard the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi say, people don't fear change, they fear loss. And so, quote unquote, outsiders coming into our community is a code, sometimes a racially coded code, of fearing loss, right? Of fearing that we're no longer going to have this special thing that we care about. And so, what is possible in these conversations, if we do it right, is to acknowledge these are not two opposing positions. We all care about our community and want to conserve it as it is. And we know that it has to be welcoming to other people that want to come in. Otherwise, it's not going to stay the same. Otherwise, it's going to shrivel and die. Otherwise, we can't keep our community intact. So that I think is actually it's a perfect example of why we have conversations like that, because we need to make room for those kind of exchanges. So thank you, Connie. I really appreciate it. And I totally agree with what you're saying.
And Connie, did you have a comment?
Me? No, he just asked for if there's anything else, and I was responding that there's this other piece of it. And
Yeah.
thank you for commenting on it.
Okay. I mean, Ben, one other dynamic that I've heard from people as it relates to the discussion about outsiders, it's not just about who comes in, but are we going to no longer be the small 5,000 person town? Are we now going to be 6,000, 7,000, 8,000? And that's going to affect the character of the town. And I moved here because it was small. So I hear about those kinds of issues and concerns. I think they're related, but I
Definitely.
think it's another dynamic.
Absolutely. And again, in a community conversation, you can acknowledge that and saying, yeah, absolutely. We're talking about building, 5 units. We're not building a 200, unit high rise. And sometimes that's all people got to hear. They hear housing, they hear affordable housing, they hear development, and their mind goes to a place that's just inaccurate. And so again, a place where we welcome everybody, we acknowledge everybody's concerns, and then we share different people's facts and experiences. Right? Like a adorable, maybe 5 foot elderly Republican Catholic woman who I've worked with for years at Oxford. A fellow member of her church said, well, I don't want affordable housing because, then those people are going to live here. And she looks up at her with her cutest smile and says, you mean like my daughter? And that's the kind of exchange that we can make possible with our neighbors and help people recognize that we got more in common than we think, and we got more in common in terms of desires that we think. And that, yeah, nobody wants to have 2,000 more residents right away, and we're not gonna because we're talking about a 20-unit development. And here's what it's going to look like, and here are the pictures, and here is the way it is going to fit in with the architecture of the town regardless. But here's the key, and Alex and I have talked about a bunch of this. The first conversations that we have are not going to be about here is the planned development. The first conversations we have, at least in my experience, you want to be, let's talk about this issue in general and talk about it from our own experiences. So let's share our experiences about finding a place to live, keeping a place to live in Bethany. What has been beautiful, what has been challenging, what do we wish, what do we, but keep it to people sharing about their own experiences and looking for, again, that common ground. What are we all looking for? And we have a bunch of these conversations. And then when it is time to propose, a development possibility, we come back to the same groups of people and say, here is what we heard. Here is what we think might be an option that could answer some of these questions and solve some of these problems that everybody shared. So it's letting the community inform the kind of projects, the kind of developments, the kind of buildings we're talking about, and then share possibilities as an answer to people's questions and desires. And then we can say what works about this, what doesn't, what do we get right, what do we get wrong. And then the last thing I'll say is in the process, what we're always doing in all these conversations is looking for more allies, looking for people who would want to join the committee, looking for people who'd want to do, work on working groups, looking for people that would want to help us plan more conversations in their communities. So the point is to always be looking to expand the we, expand the involvement, expand the information, expand the group of people that are on the inside helping to build the thing, as opposed to on the outside just saying what you all are doing is bad, right? Because when people are involved in building something, they're much more likely to support it.
How do you outreach, if I could ask a question?
Yeah,
How do you
Please.
make an outreach to the Bethany community that simply just brings in the people by hope that have misconceptions, have fears, have all the all the most oppositional conceptions of affordable housing, and not the people who are advocates for that concept in the first place. It's like 10 to 1, right? At first or something. How does that?
So here is what I want to say to that, and thank you for bringing that up. And I am an expert at facilitation. I am not an expert at Bethany. So if anything I say it feels inaccurate to your community, you tell me so, because you know a lot more about Bethany than I do. But in a lot of communities that I've worked, here's what I find. If you just put up a thing on, the town Facebook group, or, put up a thing that says, come talk about affordable housing, then you're going to get exactly what you're talking about, right? But if you approach people in their own communities and you say, hey, do you have folks in your neighborhood? Do you have folks in your church congregation? Do you have folks in your local organization that we could get together and talk about the challenges that we and the people we know have, finding a home, keeping a home, in Bethany. Um, it's a very different thing. First of all, you're not using the buzzword of housing or affordable housing. Second of all, you're working through relationships. I ask you, because I have a relationship with you, to talk with the people that you have a relationship with and bring them together and let's share. Um, then, once you've done a bunch of those, then you can have a publicly advertised conversation, and you're going to have a much different outcome because you've already got people primed to share who have been part of the process before.
so let me pick up on a keyword that you made.
Please.
And I saw Lauren make a little, that you mentioned, I saw Lauren kind of make a face. But my wife does periodically track what's going on with Facebook. And there is
Mhm.
whole Bethany
Yeah.
town Facebook page. And she's seen various posts out there, one from a high school senior, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
But basically about where is all the low income housing going to go in Bethany? And that's sort of the tenor and tone. There've been
Right.
others she's mentioned to me. So while, I mean, to me, they
Yeah.
are also a very good potential target to reach out to. We're gonna have to engage with everyone on that, and there could be
Yep.
some people that aren't gonna change their views or perception. But we have to start having that conversation with that viewpoint. So I kind of
Yep.
throw that out.
Absolutely. And what I would just say quickly, and then Hiram, I see you. Um, Absolutely going to have that conversation, and we're not going to start there. We're going to start with people that we have got, one-to-one relationships with, and have got, or a few degrees of separation, and you start building that shared understanding. Then by the time you get to, yeah, right, we'll advertise conversations on Facebook, and people will come. And here's what in my experience happens. They're going to come thinking that it's going to be a bunch of arrogant liberals shoving things down their throats. And they're going to show up in that room and they're going to realize, holy crap, people actually want to hear what I have to say. And so much of the vitriol falls away. I'll give you an extreme case. This does not happen a lot, so don't worry. We had a community housing conversation in Oxford. Somebody actually threatened to bring a gun. They're like, what is this BS in my town? Blah, 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 blah. And the local leaders have said, guys, we got a good plan. He's going to come in. We're going to give him a big hug and tell him we were excited to hear what he's got to say. By the end of the meeting, he was posing for pictures with the event organizers. Like, you make it possible for people to share and be heard, they're going to listen in a way that will sometimes surprise even them. Hiram, I'm sorry.
No, Ben, I completely agree with everything you said. And I think that one thing that and Alex and some of the other commissioners may know, we're going to start to talk about the next plan of conservation and development very soon. And I think that using that kind of as a basis, Alex, to talk about some of these issues might be a way to get people started in some of this whole process. I had an experience in another town a number of years ago where we wanted to talk about a charrette for the center of town. And we had a 6 day meeting. And the first time people showed up, they were all just really upset about what they thought was going to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
8 days later, or 6 days later, and 800 people later, everybody bought into the plan. It was unanimously approved by the commission without any dissenting votes. But I just want to say I think that the way we frame this in the beginning, I think, is key, and I think you're absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. So, but I think using the plan of conservation development as the way to sort of kickstart that discussion in the very near future might be a way to sort of get this started.
And part of that POCD has to include an updated housing plan. So,
Right.
That's right. Yep.
yep.
I have a question.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Sort of in the vein of where you were taking this originally, Ben. I have a question for you because you said you worked with the town of Woodbridge on their affordable housing. Is that true?
I have worked in the town of Woodbridge. I do not currently basically, so the long story short, and I will gladly tell you the long story, but I might insist you buy me a beer. The I worked with the housing committee directly for some time, doing kind of housing conversations, directly like we're talking about. And we basically realized we weren't getting anywhere because it had been so polarized, which is unusual, right? But in that community, it had been so polarized that really everybody who showed up was kind of a usual suspect, and you couldn't get anybody else to talk about it because it had just felt so toxic. And so, what I said to the first selectman is, with your permission, Mr. First Selectman, I'm going to organize a grassroots organization that has nothing to do with the town government. And we're going to do our own thing, and we're not going to be answerable to you. And we're not going to start working on housing because it's way too poisonous. We're going to work on other issues, and build consensus, build community, build relationships, and eventually we'll get to contentious issues like housing. And the first selectman said, cool. That's what we've been doing.
Okay, because I guess I was curious as to what your level of involvement was because I also frequent those Facebook pages, and I know Woodbridge is there are some I don't know like the pulse of the town overall, but I can tell you it's still very contentious.
Oh, it
At
is.
least
Oh, yeah.
and so I guess I
This
was
is
just
a
trying to
years
figure out.
long process, and we are just beginning in Woodbridge. Sorry.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess then what my concern is that I have real worries about what I'm seeing in Woodbridge. And
Mhm.
I don't necessarily, as someone who's grown up in the area most of my life, I don't think that Bethany is significantly different in a good way from Woodbridge in that regard. I guess what I'm saying is I actually think that if there were any town that was going to be more for it, it would actually have been Woodbridge, as opposed to Bethany. So I guess that's where I'm
Yeah.
actually really, that's kind of my feeling about it. And so I guess what I'm saying is that like Woodbridge feels like a real, like a thermostat, if you will, for sort of, like a canary in the coal mine for sort of what we might be able to be anticipating. And so I guess I was
Mhm.
just trying to figure out kind of what your level was of involvement there. So, thanks.
You don't want to recreate that here.
I don't, but I
No,
don't.
No. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what you're saying there.
totally.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I have something that,
I'm happy to respond, but it looks like Hiram's got something first.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just want to let you know, and you may already know this. I'm sure many of you do. One of the reasons, or one of the ways, or one of the reasons that the issue has become so contentious in Woodbridge is it got off to the wrong start. It got off on the wrong foot. And the first thing you don't want to do is introduce a controversial application followed up by a bunch of lawyers. And I think people get polarized very quickly. So I think we can avoid that. I think we can do that by taking that much milder approach that Ben is suggesting. And I think that at this point in time, we don't have any controversial 8-30Gs pending or anything like that. So I just think if we take this tact, I think we'll be off to a better start, Lauren. That's what I think there.
Yeah,
Fair.
I totally agree. I think higher housing, the well got poisoned in Woodbridge in a very specific way. Like for instance, a lot of other towns in the area are not that way. So, and I think if we do this right, there are always going to be people posting, negative things on Facebook in every community. But unlike in Woodbridge, here we get to set the tone for this conversation at the outset, and that tone is going to be loving and caring and listening.
I think that's a bit rose colored. With how Woodbridge is going, and my concern in seeing what's happening in Woodbridge and with tackling this carefully in Bethany is how do we not overwhelm the infrastructure we have? They're putting this trying to put a development next to Beecher that is already overwhelmed, and they have no idea where they're going to put the kids they have currently. How do we walk that line? Because that's the tone that's being set in the district that we're in.
What do you mean?
Not sure. I'm sorry.
As far as,
Is to build a large.
well,
bring in
as far
many
as,
families as you can.
well, no, but I think the concern is in seeing that this is now what's being proposed in Woodbridge. How do the well is poisoned, for sure. How do you walk that line with, we want to do housing developments that are considerate, that fit in, that don't overwhelm the infrastructure. How do we walk that line with balancing that with fighting the giant that's, 2 miles down the road?
So
And
what
we
you
share.
do is, frankly, what they didn't do in Woodbridge, which is you start with the conversation before you start with a big old development you're going to plunk down. And we say, we want to do this on our own terms. Yes, there is absolutely a threat that if we don't do it on our own terms, a government or a judge or something could make that happen. And that's why we're doing this. We are
So if
doing
we,
this together. I'm
so if we
sorry.
take it as, we're trying to look at options that fit into the town culture,
Yeah.
if you will, that offer other options to people who want to move here without overwhelming, and I lost my train of thought
No,
again.
that's right.
Yeah. And
That-
offer options to people that want to stay here because a lot
But
of
if we're-
people. Mhm.
I remembered it. It's being proactive with what we propose versus having to be reactive like Woodbridge is now.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think that's a really, really important point, which is it's not about we're building housing options for other people outside the community. What I envision is if we create better housing options, we're going to have people right size their living situation, moving into smaller, easier to maintain properties, which will open it up. I mean, I kind of laugh about this whole thing about outsiders.
Yeah.
For the most part, we're all outsiders.
Sure.
And, there were a couple people who grew up in Bethany, but for the most part, we grew up elsewhere. We came to Bethany and we enjoy it. So it's creating the opportunity that if we have some seniors who want to downsize, they move into smaller, easier to maintain housing units. Their house becomes available. Who knows who's going to buy it? It could be somebody in town. It could be somebody from West Haven. It could be somebody from California. We don't know where they're coming from, but that happens all the time. So, I do think it's an important sort of
Balance.
reminder to people that it happens all the time. People from the outside, we're talking about creating a better, and again, my word is sustainable housing stock by having housing that is more accommodating to seniors that want to right size, is more accommodating to younger families that want to come in and need starter homes and there are no starter homes available. If we create that, it creates a better dynamic for people to be able to move into and out of housing that fits for them. And in the meantime, being mindful of what the state is looking to accomplish, this is not status quo. If we have 2,000 housing units right now, it's not a matter of how do we maintain 2,000. It's a matter of what's our plan to bring it to 2,200, 2,300, 2,400 within the ability of the town to absorb
Right.
and do it in an affordable way. So anyway, I just wanted to put that comment in there.
Alex, you didn't use the word affordable once just now.
You just ended.
You did at the end.
Almost.
What was it?
Once, I screwed up, I'm sorry.
Connie's hand is raised.
So can I make a comment?
Yeah, sure, Marie.
Well, Connie's hand was up for
Oh,
this week. No, is that
It
Connie's hand has
is,
been-
but I'm not on the committee, so if that's a committee person, they should go.
She's not either. So go, Connie.
Okay. I guess I think what Ben is really talking about is how we communicate and have the conversations in Bethany. And we are not Woodbridge. We may have some similarities to Woodbridge, but we are not Woodbridge. And the thing is to distinguish ourselves from Woodbridge and not to try to make summaries of what has gone on in Woodbridge. The fact that they're where they are right now has nothing to do with, where it started. And it's a very complicated situation. I happen to be one of those awful lawyers,
Mm.
in full disclosure. And this is going on what, 4 or 5 years now that this has been, and a very unfortunate zoning issue that started this all. And to talk about infrastructure and things like that, these things all have ways of getting figured out. And so when the question comes up, as Ben pointed out earlier, when those questions come up, someone says it's going to cost us too much to deal with the infrastructure of the town. And you acknowledge that that's an issue. Uh, thank you for bringing that up. And someone else says, yes, but there's a way to deal with the infrastructure, which is happening all the time in in housing issues. Every day there's something new coming along that can make the questions and the issues that people raise de dealable with. And so, you know, I just think that Bethany, and I've said this many times, is that we have to be prepared. And and the more we know and the more we have these conversations, the better we are going to be, better off we're going to be to deal with a situation that is not going away. It's just not going away. It's here now. So the
Yeah.
question is, how do we make it happen in a way that is um, civil? Which is true. Bethany has not had such a civil time these last 2 years now, almost. But we have to get over that too. We have to move forward. And figuring out how to have facilitated conversations over these very difficult issues is really going to be the trick. It's not about what Woodbridge did. It's not about what Branford did or didn't do. It's really going to be about what Bethany's going to do.
Thank you,
Want to
Connie.
move us toward next steps? Then I
I
see
do
the
want
time
to,
ticking, but I know there's another hand.
did you?
Well, let me just bring up, so Ben and I had a conversation about Rocky Corner. Because I had questions for him on, what could happen with that property, seeing it was supposed to be the third, which would have been 10 units affordable. And I just want to bring forward that that was a very polarizing time in this town. And there are a lot of people who have not forgotten it. There's a lot of younger people who don't know anything about it.
Mhm.
But one of the things that worried people that I just want to bring forward to this group, and resulted in a lot of misinformation, was septic and water system.
Mm.
Even after Rugby Corner was foreclosed on, there were still rumors in town, oh, the water was bad. There was something wrong with the water, or they didn't put the septic systems in correctly. So expect that those are going to be issues again, because people are still talking about them. People that should have known better are listening to people and hearing from people in town who are still saying the same things. So I just wanted to bring that forward, because it's not just, oh, we don't want those people. Can our town that has well water and septic support the project that's being developed?
Mhm.
I want to
Thank you.
speak directly to that just for a second, Marie, because this is part of what we do, and this goes along with what Connie was saying. Is people raise questions, we offer answers, and if we don't have the answers, we figure out together how we can get them. And so that issue has come up, specifically about water, sewer, and septic in a bunch of conversations in a bunch of towns. Last month, where I worked with the SCROG, South Central Regional Council of Governments, and we put together a whole education session on it, on water, sewer, and septic, and its relationship to housing. And I am going to put that recording in the chat right now. I'm going to send out that recording either tomorrow or Wednesday as soon as I have time, um, along with some handouts to all the emails that I have. Alex is on my email list. If other people want to be on my email list, usually a few emails a month, you can get in touch and let me know. My email, by the way, my name is Ben Fink. My email is benfink@gmail.com. So I'm very easy to reach, and anybody can be free to follow up with me and talk more. But yeah, these are, it's like the issues and questions people have are legitimate, right? I mean, just like the question about the school stuff, just because people raise these issues doesn't mean that they hate poor people, and don't want to have any affordable housing. So it's like, yeah, let's deal with them. Let's figure out something that works for us. And is it going to satisfy everybody all the time? Probably not, but it will, it will satisfy a majority, and it will satisfy, and we will, if we do this right, bring a lot of people out that are not on, just writing comments on Facebook. That is going to bring a lot of people out who are not, the gadflies, just people who are living their lives and have just not thought about the ways that this connects. So what I want to suggest, I know Alex is talking about an assignment, which I think is a great idea, is the way that we start this. That we can have a whole other conversation about how to facilitate these conversations, how to plan these conversations. Alex has been to a training that I've done on that subject. He sent out the training document, and that's something we can definitely do as a group. But what we got to do first is figure out who we're starting with, how we're meeting folks where they're at. And what I recommend, and I said this a little bit before, but I'll say it kind of more systematically now, is we start by figuring out where are the places in town where people gather on their own terms, in their own communities with their neighbors. And that looks different in every community. It can be a church or their house of worship. It can be a community center. It can be a cultural organization. It can be the living room of a neighbor that's got a lot of connections with their fellow neighbors. It can be a neighborhood organization, whatever it is, cultural, social organization. Figure out where those organizations are. And then the second thing, which overlaps but is not the same, is who are the people in town who are trusted? Who are the people in town who other people go to for information, for advice, for a perspective? Those people could have official positions, those people might not have official positions. But who are those people and what are those organizations? And then how can we connect with them? How can we say, hey, I'm on the housing committee. We're looking to make a plan to make it possible for have the sustainable housing stock, all that good language that Alex is using. And we want to make that plan with as many people as possible involved because we want this to be something that is of by and for the people of Bethany, and we want to do it right. We don't want, this to be something that's going to imposed on us. So could you help us get your people together? The people in your congregation, the people in your neighborhood, the people in your organization, for an hour or two. We'll have some snacks. And what we're going to do is we're going to share stories. We will not be pointing any fingers. We will not be shoving anything down people's throats. We want to learn from people about what matters to them, what their experiences have been around finding a home, keeping a home, looking for a home in town. And we want to see where there's common ground. We want to answer questions. We want to correct any misconceptions. And we want to see where people are interested in working together. And I really think that that's where this starts if we do it right. And we're going to build the kind of trust that we're talking about. So I believe, and Alex, feel free to jump in here. One of the assignments for the next meeting is to think about those organizations and those individuals that we can approach.
Yes. So I'm going to kind of merge that. It's a great segue. Thank you, Ben. Into a couple of different action items that I think hopefully we're ready to move forward on, but I would like each of us to think about identifying a particular group. Now, Tom, you and I talked, I know you don't.
Oh, no, I wanted to speak right to that issue. I called two people that were riders on my bus, and I picked them because they were socially active in Bethany organizations. One of them responded very positively, and she's very involved with the Historical Society. I also called up Mark Hawes, who's a retired architect in town, and he's also involved in a couple of Bethany organizations, volunteering his time. These are people that can network out, and he responded very positively once we have a little structure. And I want to see that grow out. But I got two good responses.
All
The
right,
people are involved in town.
you're ahead of the curve. Um, but it is starting to find those types of connections. And I mean, something you mentioned, Ben, and I'm gonna throw this out, Kim, I'm gonna ask you. Robin Glower, she's a town employee. She is so active in outreach and involvement and all sorts of things. Would it be compromising to try to talk to her about how we can start connect to people about this kind of issue, do you think?
Not at all. I don't
Yeah,
think,
I
sorry.
think she'd be person that she would be a good resource.
She would?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I
I
just?
mean, yeah,
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the flow. I guess my step back on this is this? I totally support the process. I think they can yield great results, all that other good stuff. Is this part of our charter as the committee? Do we need to check back at all with P and Z about that? To actually engage in launching zone IFSLs? I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm saying, is that a worthwhile check?
well, that,
And secondly, how does it fit into the plan of conservation and development and the whole work of P and Z? Because we are a appointed subcommittee of P and Z. We are not a separate housing committee.
we are
per se.
strictly advisory.
So I'm just raising that before we get
Yeah.
too far down the road.
And the way I look at
Process
this,
question,
Hiram,
yeah.
I will ask for your guidance on this, but I know when our first go around, we sponsored a townwide survey about housing
I mean,
issues.
the Affordable Housing Committee, when we were on that in
Correct,
2021.
which is essentially kind of what we are, but I mean, because
That iteration.
one of our charges is to provide guidance and input to planning and zoning for an
Mhm.
update on that housing plan
Mhm,
that feeds into the P O C D.
mhm.
So I do believe it's within our purview,
Mhm.
but that relates to another action item, which is really my action item. Now that we have, Wednesday would be my last official date on P and Z. So we have a new P and Z commission, 3 new members, full-time
Yeah.
members coming on board. So I would like to set up a time, whether it be January or February. I mean, they're gonna have to get their feet under them. But to meet with them, to update them, and I would invite any and all that want to participate in that.
Mhm.
But that'd be one of the questions.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is, you know, we see us as a resource to help them
Mhm.
update the housing plan and feed into the P O C D. Here's what we've been talking about, so we can share the fact that, because I don't want to go behind their back. I don't want
That's
to
what I
go
was-
behind the back of the new first selectmen, the board of selectmen that are coming in. So, you know, there's a lot of different points that we have to touch. We just kind of hit a awkward point because we have so much transition and change that's going on with town leadership that,
I'm just saying, I think it would be prudent for us to make sure that leadership and new composition is aware of this as a possible strategy before we actually develop the strategy and initiate the strategy. That's all I'm
I
saying.
think that's great. A great point.
I know,
Yeah.
I wasn't implying you weren't, but it's like, wait a minute, guys.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a question regarding that, in that the response was, I got three people I spoke to, the response from two, like I say, very active in community organizations, was positive. When they asked, well, in one way or another, what was the structure? And I said, well, I'm hoping that a, offshoot of what we're doing will be a nonprofit advocacy citizen group. And we talked about that.
Mhm.
And I said, once I know what that is.
Yeah, and we
Yep.
don't even know
I'll
if
be
that's
happy.
what we wanna
Yeah,
do, right?
yeah.
So. this is-
Yeah.
I think these-
Non-government.
And Leslie, I'll be honest with you, I've sort of gone back and forth in my mind.
Sure.
Is this a more appropriate activity to delegate off to a nonprofit group? So Ben, given your
Yeah,
experience in Woodbridge right now, is
yeah.
this yet an inflection point where maybe we need to try to organize and offload some stuff?
It's a really good question, and it really depends community to community, right? So like in Guilford, the housing committee runs the conversations. In Brantford, there's a separate nonprofit that's connected, that's got connections with government, but is a separate nonprofit that's doing it. In Wallingford, it's a totally, just it's a community group that without any formal structure. My thing is always do what's effective. So I think at some point, I do think long term, it is valuable for there to be a grassroots led group that is working for housing for all, that is not beholden to or connected to government. I do think long term that is a smart thing to have. Whether you need that right now before starting these conversations, I would say no, unless we encounter some roadblock the way we did in Woodbridge, in which case we will retool and figure out a new strategy.
Okay. Other things that you think we should be thinking about as we embark on this assignment to identify groups and at this point is not action that we're not going to actually engage, but to find the level of interest and who they may be. And then
Yeah.
from a tactical point of view, how and when do we start to engage with them?
So, what I would suggest, and Alex, if you think this is moving too fast, you can, of course, veto me on this. I think doing what Tom did is the right thing to do, which is contact them and say, hey, I'm on this committee. We're looking to get more people involved. We're looking to host some conversations, where people can share stories, whatever. Is that something that you would be up for, working together on? Like, you don't need to do the hard sell, like, let's get a date and time on the calendar. But having that kind of conversation to gauge people's interest in the way that Tom did, I think is really valuable. And then the other thing to ask, and I think, again, Tom, you kind of implied this, for people that are interested is, who else should we be talking to? Who else has got connections with communities and within town that maybe we haven't thought of yet? So I think that's the thing that I would advise, because everybody knows people that we don't, right? Like, one thing that I have learned, I think actually you were talking about this, Alex, last time we talked, but like, I never, before I moved to Kentucky, thought about volunteer firehouses as places where the community comes together. And I realized in so many communities, that's a thing. And so just asking other people, who else should we be talking to, and having those exploratory conversations. Then next, when we come back together, and I've already told Alex this time doesn't usually work for me, but I'm happy to find other meeting time that does. Say, just run down the list. here are the people we talk to that are interested, and here's, what they're interested in. And then and then next month, make a plan for reconnecting with those folks and start putting some dates, times on the calendar. And then once you got some dates and times on the calendar, then we can definitely talk about how to most effectively like structure and facilitate and plan those conversations.
So it related to that would be, as we get to the point where we're starting to organize these,
Yep.
would you suggest it would be beneficial that maybe the first 2 or 3 of these, we have someone like you, a trained facilitator, participate, or should we do it by the seat of our pants?
Great question. I think whenever people feel confident to do it, I think it's great when it's run neighbor to neighbor. If you say to me, Ben, we are nervous about doing this. We need somebody from the outside to come in and do the first one for us so that we can watch and see the way it works. I can help make that happen. Either I will come do it, or I'll get somebody from another town who's got experience doing it. But I think the goal, as much as possible, is for this to be done by folks in town, because people just respond way differently to their own neighbors.
Okay.
And again, I am always happy to be the coach behind the scenes.
All right.
Done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the clock, so we're at the end of our allotted time. Ben, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Thank you all for the work you're doing.
Take care.
Any final words of wisdom before we wind down here?
People are excited to talk with each other. Everybody's lonely. Everybody's looking for opportunities to connect. Don't be shy about making an offer to people. And if they want to say no, they'll say no. But you'll be surprised how many people say yes.
All right, well, thank you. I am gonna go through a couple things. Ben, you're more than welcome to stay on. I'll try to take this, wrap it up in 2 minutes. So we got our one action item in terms of thinking about groups and people. Second action item is really starting to develop some more concrete ideas around how we might want to approach the state with a proposal to get some financial and technical support on work that we want to do. So we
Such as,
well, a lot of this is kind of tied right now. I mean, what I understand is basically, and I think this is what Leslie shared with us, we really need to identify particular areas that might be amenable for some sort of housing development.
okay.
We don't have our map yet, just a quick
We don't,
update.
yeah, I wondered. Okay.
It's gonna cost an additional $250 to complete the map the way we asked for it. So again, it's one of these things
Gotta
with a
wait till
change
the
in
end,
trend in
yeah.
administrations. It'll be something that I'll talk to the Board of Selectmen about next week. It's only $250, so I'm hopeful that's not gonna be a deal breaker. But once we have the map. So if that's the direction we need to go, what I'd like to do is start to narrow down on here are the steps we need to take. So that we can potentially form a working group, and it doesn't have to be just members of this committee. We can outreach to other people to be part of a working group, but ultimately to develop a draft proposal that we might be able to move on.
To move in with the POCD too, or with Hiram's help. I mean,
Absolutely.
updating that, yeah.
Yeah. So think about that, and then the last thing has to do with our meeting calendar for next year.
Yeah.
So I have to get that submitted tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And first Mondays of the month continue to work well for people.
They're fun, but what's the first day in January? It's not.
January 5th.
Okay. I was gonna say. Phew.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah, I won't
good.
be home.
Yeah, so,
You better not by then, Tom.
I mean, I
please.
can send this out in an email to everybody,
Yeah,
but
good.
you can look on your calendars.
But first days are good.
One question comes up is typically, we would either take August or July off just to kind of recognize. I know P and Z normally does August as an off month. But I'm also noticing that the first Monday in July is right on the back end of the 4th of July weekend. So if we want, I mean, if you have any thoughts right now, I can amend this, but I'm thinking of telling the town clerk that we're gonna take July off and we'll meet August. The other sort of change is again, Labor Day this year will fall on a Monday.
Sure.
So I'll just automatically submit it as moving to the following Monday.
Okay.
And then the last question I have out there is, we've been holding to this once a month. If people have a strong feeling that we need to have some sort of interim meeting so we can move some things along, please feel free to let me know. And I'm not expecting that everybody needs to sign on to that. So, again, I made commitments to a lot of people about not abusing your time. So I'm not gonna go ahead and just presume that we can start meeting every other week. But at some point, we may get some activities going that it doesn't make sense to wait month to month. So think about that. Any comments, questions from anybody else?
I have one more, just if there's.
Yeah.
Just a sec. I watched the video, I think, with your father did taking the
Yeah.
bus ride.
Ben?
Yeah.
Yep,
And I know
I was
that's-
on that bus.
Thank you. Who was on that
My
bus?
fiance made that video.
Beautiful. I was, enamored with all that went on there, but who was on, were towns, just townspeople, or were there people from town governments on that? Or
Yeah,
planning?
so that was the invite was for people in town governments, so planners and sort of mayors and first selectable and people in official positions.
What was the video?
It was a video of a tour, of a bus tour of income restricted housing developments in Wallingford and Milford, and talking with developers, talking with town officials, basically, some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, that this is the way that these developments sort of fit into communities and enhance the life of communities and are not, and are pretty, actually.
And I would say, Alex, if I could piggyback on that a little bit, I think I still would love it if this group could do some
Sure.
Yes.
Litchfield
I was hoping. you'd say
County
that.
That would
ones
be
that are
great.
like Bethany more than Milford and Wallingford in terms of the type of physical characteristic of a Litchfield and a Norfolk and a
Yeah. Yeah.
Cornwall. And I'm not saying we can do all of that, but we talked about doing that before. And I think when you get in this sort of dialogue with people in a community around housing, it just helps if you have had your own. Cause it always comes up, it's
Yeah.
gonna look like this, it's gonna look like that. Well, actually, if you see the way it looks in Kent, you'd be amazed. And if you have been there, you can say that stuff. So I don't know how we can swing that, and it's coming up into the winter, but I do think it would be helpful.
It's a powerful tool, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you have, are there two or three?
Yeah, sure. And
I
know
mean,
the
if
people.
you want to sort of shoot that information to me,
Yeah.
I mean, one question I had, kind of combining the two ideas. If we took a trip and we had some video
Mhm.
that we could show so that when we get into some of these facilitated discussions, we can say, here's an idea of what's going on in Cornwall,
Mhm.
and talk about the characteristics of these
Yeah.
towns, and here's what's possible.
They're like us,
Yeah.
to be frank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same scale.
Yeah.
Grab a kid to
Just
video
put-
it from Amity,
And especially with no water.
What's that?
or
Oh,
grab a
water
kid from
system.
Amity, one of the, like one of the classes, I know somebody approached me about making a video. Or critical issues class, like the two guys that were here, you know, some.
Oh, yeah, that was so.
Because if you started with somebody like that, that's,
And they could tell their friends, their friends.
Okay.
I just put the link to that video in the chat that we're talking about, the video of that bus tour. So if anybody is interested, they can take a look.
Yeah, and Ben, if you just want to shoot that off to me, any of that stuff, I can throw it
yeah,
off to the.
because we don't have
committee
access to the
members, so.
chat.
Understood. I'll send it to you right now, Alex.
All right,
Do I get to move to adjourn?
yeah,
Are we done?
It's my
Second.
favorite part of the meeting.
Second.
Oh, there's a.
all right, all in favor? Aye, thank you all.
Thank
Ben,
you.
thank you, Hiram, thank you, Connie, appreciate
Okay.
your participation.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you, bye-bye.
All right. See some of you Wednesday.